Rebecca Palmer's stomach began swelling mysteriously, growing larger each week despite doctor visits and countless tests. Colleagues whispered. Strangers asked about her due date. She wore baggy clothes and stopped looking in mirrors. Medical professionals dismissed her concerns, suggesting stress and diet changes. By month 5, the pain became unbearable, and her body was failing. When surgeons finally opened her abdomen, they stepped back in stunned silence. Rebecca Palmer stood in front of her bedroom mirror one morning, getting ready for work. She ran her hand over her stomach and paused. Something felt different. There was a slight bulge that hadn't been there before. She pressed gently, feeling a firmness beneath the skin. It didn't feel like fat. She turned to the side, examining her reflection from different angles. The 32-year-old teacher shook her head and blamed it on recent late-night snacks. She told herself it was nothing to worry about, just a phase that would pass. Maybe she needed to get back to the gym. Weeks passed, and the bulge grew more noticeable. Rebecca started pulling out looser shirts from the back of her closet. She avoided mirrors. She stopped going to the gym. She made excuses when friends suggested meeting up. A quiet shame settled over her, the assumption that she had simply let herself go. Her students at school started asking if she was okay. When colleagues at school began making subtle comments about her appearance, she finally picked up the phone to schedule a doctor's appointment. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. She almost hung up twice before someone answered. Her family physician examined her briefly during the visit. He pressed on her abdomen a few times, asked some routine questions. He barely looked up from his chart. He suggested it was probably stress-related bloating, or maybe she had gained some weight. He recommended cutting back on salt and carbs. Rebecca left the office feeling dismissed, but she tried following his advice anyway. She cut out bread, avoided salty foods, drank more water. She weighed herself daily, watching the numbers climb. Despite her efforts, the bulge continued growing. 3 months had now passed since that first morning. Rebecca's abdomen kept expanding, and cramping had started. The discomfort was constant. Sharp pains would strike without warning throughout the day. During classes, she would grip the edge of her desk, waiting for the pain to pass. She couldn't sleep on her stomach anymore without sharp pain shooting through her body. She tried sleeping on her side, then on her back, but nothing helped. During a weekend visit, her sister noticed immediately. Her eyes widened when she saw Rebecca. She pulled her aside and demanded to know what was happening. She insisted Rebecca see a specialist, refusing to take no for an answer. The gastroenterologist ran several tests. Blood panels came back normal. Stool samples showed nothing unusual. Ultrasounds revealed something, but nothing definitive. Nothing came back conclusive. He mentioned irritable bowel syndrome and handed Rebecca a list of dietary recommendations. She walked out of his office with more questions than answers. The pain continued. The growth continued. Her clothes stopped fitting. Nothing made sense. By the 5th month, strangers approached Rebecca in grocery stores and coffee shops. They asked when her baby was due, their faces bright with excitement. Some even reached out to touch her stomach. She learned to step back quickly. Each time, Rebecca had to explain she wasn't pregnant. She watched their expressions shift from joy to confusion to pity. Some apologized profusely. Others simply walked away. The conversations became unbearable. She started declining invitations from friends and called in sick to work more frequently. She spent evenings alone in her apartment, crying. She researched conditions online, terrifying herself with possibilities. The physical pain was relentless, but the emotional weight crushed her even more. Her sister grew increasingly worried. She spent hours online, reading about ovarian cysts, fibroids, tumors. Medical forums filled her browser history. She called Rebecca constantly, begging her to get a second opinion at a major hospital. Rebecca was exhausted from the medical runaround. She felt hopeless. She had spent months being told nothing was wrong, but her sister wouldn't let it go, and Rebecca finally agreed to try one more time. At the hospital, a new doctor entered the examination room. He listened to Rebecca's entire story without interrupting. He took notes. He asked detailed questions about her symptoms, about the timeline, about what other doctors had said. He seemed genuinely concerned. Then he ordered comprehensive imaging right away. When the results came back, his expression changed completely. The color drained from his face. He told Rebecca they needed to admit her immediately for more tests. Something was there, something significant, but they couldn't identify exactly what it was. The uncertainty terrified Rebecca more than anything else. Was it cancer? Was she dying? Had it already spread? Why couldn't anyone tell her what was happening to her body? She called her sister in tears, struggling to explain what the doctors had said. That night, she barely slept, staring at the hospital ceiling. Rebecca spent 2 days in the hospital undergoing scan after scan, blood work, more imaging, specialists coming in and out of her room. The medical team seemed genuinely baffled. She lay in her hospital bed, watching doctors gather outside her room in hushed conferences. She caught fragments of their conversations through the door. Technical terms she didn't understand. None of it made sense to her. The medical terms meant nothing, but she could hear the confusion in their voices. She could see them shaking their heads. One doctor pulled out his phone to show something to another. They looked concerned. On the third night, Rebecca woke to pain, unlike anything she had experienced before. Sharp, stabbing sensations ripped through her abdomen. It felt like something was tearing inside her. She tried to call out, but could barely breathe. She screamed. Nurses rushed into her room immediately. They checked her vital signs, and their faces showed alarm. One nurse grabbed the phone. Another adjusted her IV. Her blood pressure was dropping. Her heart rate was climbing. Something was very wrong. Within minutes, Rebecca found herself being wheeled down bright corridors towards surgery. Ceiling lights flashed by above her. Faces appeared and disappeared. Through the fog of fear and pain medication, she heard the surgical team talking urgently. One surgeon mentioned a mass with unusual characteristics. Another said something about tissue that didn't match typical tumors. Someone suggested it might be an extreme teratoma. Rebecca didn't know what any of these terms meant, but she heard the urgency, the concern, the bewilderment in their voices. She felt tears streaming down her face. She tried to ask questions, but her mouth wouldn't form the words. Was she dying? What was growing inside her? Why did it look so strange on the scans? The anesthesia took hold. Everything went black. The surgeons made their incision and began carefully opening Rebecca's abdomen. What they found stopped them in their tracks. For a moment, the operating room went silent. Someone gasped. Nestled among her organs was a partially formed structure. It had recognizable human features: bone formation, strands of hair, developing tissue. It looked almost peaceful, curled up inside her. The surgeons exchanged glances. None of them had encountered anything like this before in their careers. The lead surgeon asked for additional lighting. They needed to see this clearly. It was a fetus in situ, an extremely rare condition where one twin absorbs another during early development in the womb. Only 1 in 500,000 births. The absorbed twin had remained dormant inside Rebecca for 32 years, hidden and silent, a microscopic presence that had simply existed. Recent stress from losing her mother and ending a long-term relationship had triggered hormonal changes in her body. Those changes caused the absorbed twin to suddenly begin growing after 3 decades of dormancy. The mass had been pressing against Rebecca's organs, causing all the pain and swelling that doctors had dismissed for months. It had grown larger than a grapefruit. Even more alarming, it had begun developing a primitive circulatory system that was tapping into Rebecca's blood supply, feeding off her, growing stronger while making her weaker. The surgeons could see tiny vessels connecting the mass to her own. If the surgery had been delayed even a few more weeks, the situation could have become fatal. The surgical team worked carefully for hours. They had to remove the mass without damaging any of Rebecca's internal organs. Every movement had to be precise, every cut calculated. The absorbed twin had intertwined itself with her body over the course of 32 years. Blood vessels had connected. Tissue had fused. Separating them required extreme caution. One wrong move could cause catastrophic bleeding. Finally, after hours in the operating room, they succeeded. Rebecca woke in recovery, groggy and disoriented. Her throat was dry. Everything felt heavy. The surgeon sat beside her bed and explained what they had found. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. She couldn't speak. She couldn't process the words she was hearing. Her mind refused to accept it. She had been carrying her twin sister inside her body her entire life. Every birthday, every achievement, every photo, every memory. She had never been alone. This other life had been there, hidden, sharing her existence without her knowledge. The days following surgery brought devastation that went far beyond physical recovery. Rebecca felt grief for a sister she never knew existed, a twin who never got to live. She felt violated by her own body, as if it had kept a secret from her for 3 decades. She felt anger at the doctors who had dismissed her symptoms for so long, who had let this grow when it could have been discovered sooner. And beneath everything else, she felt a strange, inexplicable sense of loss. Part of herself had been removed along with the twin, an emptiness she couldn't explain to anyone. She found herself touching her stomach, feeling the absence. The hospital provided counseling sessions, but Rebecca struggled to process any of it. How could she grieve someone who never existed as a separate person? She asked to see the pathology reports. She asked to see photos from the surgery. The medical team hesitated, but eventually agreed. Part of her immediately wished she hadn't. The absorbed twin had developed enough to have recognizable features, small fingers, traces of a face. It was haunting. It was a reminder of a life that never was, yet somehow always had been. Months passed. Rebecca's incision healed. Her physical strength returned. But emotionally, she was forever changed. She thought about her twin constantly. She wondered what she would have been like, what their lives might have been together. Would they have been identical? Would they have been close? She had carried her sister for 32 years, completely unaware. Now she had to learn how to live alone in her own body for the first time. Sometimes she still felt the ghost of that presence inside her. And you, if you discovered you had carried your twin inside you your entire life, how would you cope with that reality?